Are you and your spouse hurting each other? My guest said there's help, but it's from the invisible world. Next on this edition of It's Supernatural.
Centuries have come and gone, offering wisdom and understanding throughout the ages. Today there should be nothing beyond one's power to discover, and yet the strange, unusual, and mysterious world of the supernatural defies understanding. Stay tuned for a unique and powerful investigation into a curious, undiscovered universe only on It's Supernatural.
Hello, I'm Sid Roth, your investigative reporter. 1 out of 2 marriages are in divorce, and it's not getting better, it's getting worse. There's something wrong. There's something terribly wrong. And many of you have never considered that there is an invasion in the invisible world to destroy your marriage. Aren't you sick and tired of being hurt or being used to hurt your spouse? Isn't there something better to life than what you have? My guest, Craig Hill, says there is. You're an expert in marriage. How long have you been married, Craig?
Well, I've been married 23 years, Sid, and I experienced exactly what you just said. You know, I found out there were supernatural forces working against my marriage, and I didn't realize that. When my wife and I got married, we loved each other, and our plan was never to hurt each other, but to obviously we got married to help each other and to want to be together. But you know, very shortly after...
No one gets married for it to destroy, or they wouldn't bother getting married. They all feel it's forever.
That's right. And you know what happened shortly after I got married? I found out that my wife would end up crying all the time. She would end up being hurt by me all the time. I mean, not physically, but emotionally. And it seemed like everything I tried, she always it just made matters worse. She felt worse and worse and worse.
Wait a second, you're a smart person. You see you're hurting your wife. You didn't want to hurt her, did you?
No.
But you were, so why couldn't you just stop whatever you were doing that was causing the hurt?
You know, I couldn't understand what it was that was hurting her, and I tried and tried for 7 years to try to understand. And you know what my conclusion was, Sid?
What's that?
I concluded there's just something wrong with my wife. She must need a lot of counseling, or she must need a lot of help. There's just something emotionally wrong with her, because she seemed to be emotional about everything, you know. I mean, even things that I didn't think should matter. And they matter to her, and she'd be upset and unhappy and cry and be angry with me, and I just felt like I must be a terrible person to cause somebody this much pain. And I could not understand what it was that was doing that until 7 years into our marriage.
But you know something? You thought she was the problem.
Exactly.
Isn't that what happens? You say, I know what I'm going to do. I'll divorce my wife and I won't have a problem.
Sure. And
that's the natural way.
And of course, what people don't realize, two things. They don't realize that they are carrying with them the seed of that problem, which they will plant in any other field. I mean, they can...
What happens when people get divorced normally?
Well, there's a destructive force that obviously they carry with them a lot of wounding and hurt.
So they go into the new marriage. Does new marriage usually work out?
Well, I think the statistic you were quoting, 50% are in divorce. I think for second marriages, it's between 70 and 80%.
So it's like we don't learn whatever lesson we're supposed to learn. Yeah. We don't learn.
Apparently, statistically, it's worse. People carry more with them, and there are two problems. One is they carry seed with them that they plant in the next marriage. The second problem is they don't realize there is literally supernatural forces that are working against them to destroy their marriage. The Bible talks about these kind of forces, but very few people understand that these things are real and actually impact people.
So what happened in your marriage?
Well, in our marriage, finally, after 7 years, I had a personal relationship with God where He would speak to me. And I had an experience where God spoke to me at a particular time and gave me a key that unlocked something in my marriage, Sid, something that I didn't know before, that I'd never understood. And actually, the experience happened first with one of my children. Because I noticed the same thing was beginning to happen with my children. They were only 4 and 1 at that time. I have 2 sons. This was probably 12, 13, well, it'll be 15 years ago now, something like that. But what began to happen, I got into an argument with my son, and he was only 4 years old, in a restaurant. And this would be a common experience, I suppose, for a lot of people. I was trying to get him to eat his food. And,
sounds familiar.
Anybody that has small children has had this experience. And while I was in the middle of this argument, this power struggle with him, what had happened, he had ordered a hamburger, and the moment it had come, I had cut the hamburger in half. And he teared up and looked at me and said, "You ruined it." And the thing that I failed to recognize is that I had been making a big deal out of the fact that his plate of food was his, because he was 4 years old. So I just released his plate of food to him to put on his own ketchup and his own, cut his own food and that sort of thing. And here I just reached into his plate and violated that. And so he was crying, and I was trying to get him to eat the food, and he was saying, "You ruined it, and you have to fix it." And I said, "I'm not going to fix it." And, "Well, then you have to buy me another one." I said, "I'm not buying you another one. Those cost money." And God stopped me in the middle of this interchange with my son, and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm trying to get my son to eat his food." And God spoke to me, and he said to me, "You're not just trying to get him to eat his food. What you have done," he said, "this discussion isn't even about hamburgers. This discussion is about his identity. This discussion is about his value as a person." And God said to me, without realizing it, "You communicated to him a message that he is worthless, that he means nothing." And I thought, "What are you talking about, God? I don't understand that." And God said, "See, you made a big deal out of how that's his plate of food, and you also made a big deal out of how, as a 4-year-old, he's not allowed to put his hands in any other people's space. And then you reached right into his space, you cut his hamburger, and by doing that, you communicated a message to him that he's not a real person, that he's worthless, that he has no value in your sight." And God said to me, "He's actually crying over the fact that he has no value in your sight. He's not crying over the hamburger." And so I decided to check that out with him. And my son's name was Josh, and I said, "Josh, listen, when I reached over and cut your hamburger, did I make you feel like I don't care about you, like I don't love you?" He said, "Yes, Dad." I said, "Now, Josh, when I further threatened to spank you and became angry with you, did I make you feel like eating that hamburger was more important to me than you are as my son?" He said, "Yes, Dad." And I said, "Josh, God just spoke that to me. And I never saw that before. That was so wrong of me to do that way without even asking you. Would you please forgive me?" He said, "Yes, Dad." And you know, it was over for him instantly.
What about your wife?
And right after I had this experience, even as I was walking out of the restaurant, I heard God speak to me again, Sid. And he said, "You know what just happened to your son?" I said, "Yes." God said, "You do that same thing to your wife all the time. You cut her hamburger." And I mean, not literally, but he said, what you do to your wife is oftentimes you communicate a message to her heart, you're worthless.
Give me an example of something you might have done to communicate that to your wife.
I had an experience one time of coming home late, 2 hours later than I said I was going to come home. And she was angry with me as a result of that. And I had reasons why I was late, and so we argued about all those reasons. Now, this happened again after that experience, and I heard God speak to me again in the middle of that, and he said, "Son, you're not talking about being late. You're talking about value again. You're communicating a message to her, you're worthless. You don't mean anything. You're not worth spending time with."
Craig, you're touching a lot of nerves right now. We'll be right back, because there is hope for your marriage, not in the natural, but in the supernatural. We'll be right back after this. Hello, YouTube. Mishpacha. Mishpacha is a Hebrew word. It means family. This is Sid Roth. Welcome to my world, where it's naturally supernatural. If you've been blessed by this show, please subscribe. Then click the bell so you won't miss a single episode of It's Supernatural. Hello, I'm Sid Roth, your investigative reporter, and oh, have we touched on nerves. Are you devaluing your spouse and not even realizing it? Are you hurting your husband? Are you saying by your action you have no worth? Craig, you told me that God taught you something in a restaurant.
Yes.
With your son, who you love. You do it. You give your life for your son.
Right.
And you were devaluing him.
Right.
But God told you something else about yourself in that restaurant.
You know, a thing that happened as I was sitting there, God reminded me of a Bible verse that I had read where Jesus said, having eyes you don't see, having ears you don't hear, you have a hardened heart. And that's what I heard God speak to me. He said, that's happening to you right now. You have a hardened heart. You think you're talking about a hamburger, but this has nothing to do with the meal. This has everything to do with the value of your son. And what I learned that day, Sid, is that there are two levels of communication. There's what I call a topical level and a relational level. And on a topical level, people are discussing issues. Why were you late? Who takes out the garbage? Why did you spend that money? Why didn't you do this? In marriage, you know,
Right.
people discuss all
Sure.
these various things on a topical level. And what they don't see is that underneath that topical level, there is a relational level where they're communicating value messages to one another. You're worthless. You don't mean anything. You're of no value. And that's the level that people respond to. That's what they're responding on a heart level to that and not really realizing that. And so I've noticed that couples will go round and round and round on a topical issue, never dealing with the value issue.
Having nothing to do with the subject even.
That's right.
I mean, many times I'll talk to my wife and I'll realize there's a problem and I will approach it logically.
That's right.
And I won't even touch the surface of the problem.
Right. And I remember one couple came to me and they shared this story with me. Here was a husband driving home with his wife and son on the way from an event, and he was just wanting to do something to really honor his wife, do something special for her, and he remembered how much she loved ice cream, and specifically ice cream from the Dairy Queen store. So he
My wife too.
Yeah, he said, honey, how'd you like to stop at Dairy Queen? She said, oh, that would be wonderful. Let's do that. So they went to Dairy Queen, and what he didn't realize is, again, I believe there are negative supernatural forces that work against people's lives to destroy their marriage, and people don't recognize it, don't realize it, and they walk right into a trap and don't even know it. And that's what happened to this man in Dairy Queen. He walked into Dairy Queen, looked up on the menu with his wife, and he said to her a very innocent statement or comment, honey, what would you like to have? Well, she looked on the menu and she said, I think I'd like a banana split. He looked up on the menu and replied, $4.50 for a banana split? And she replied, all you ever think about is money. You're totally selfish and greedy.
You know what I've noticed? The all. And then the husband responds, well, I thought about it that time, but I normally don't do that. That's what's going on in the husband's mind, but what's going on in the wife's mind has nothing to do with the money.
It didn't have to do with, see, honestly, he thought they were talking about ice cream and how expensive ice cream was. That's what he thought they were talking about. And again, that was the topical issue. But underneath that, what he did not realize is that he just sent his wife a relational message that was very simple. You're not worth $4.50. You're not the price worth.
It's awful when you really hear that.
Sure. Well, if you walked up to any person, man or woman, family member or anyone else, looked them in the eyes and said, you're not worth $4.50. Well, that would hurt anybody.
Sure.
Anybody would be hurt over that. And what happened was this man did that and didn't realize he had done it. Now, I believe that that was set up in the supernatural realm.
After it was set up, what should he have done to correct it?
Well, what he needed to do was to recognize the relational level of communication. And what I found in marriage, what I found in my own marriage, when I discovered this principle of relational communication, that every time I got in an argument with my wife, we were not talking about what I thought we were talking about. Ice cream or being late.
So if you're not talking about what you thought you were talking about, how do you know what you're talking about?
Here's how you know. You get a clue when your wife gets angry with you, or your husband closes up and withdraws, or your husband is spending more and more time at work and not coming home, not wanting to be with you, and you think, well, he just doesn't love me. No, chances are what's happened is there's a relational message that's been communicated. You're worthless, and what husbands tend to do is close up, and what wives tend to do is criticize. And those two things are pretty consistent with most people. So what do you do about it? Well, when your husband closes up and withdraws, or when your wife criticizes, that is a sure sign that you just sent a relational message, you're worthless. So what did the man in the ice cream store need to do? Well, when he gets a response coming back to an innocent question or an innocent comment, $4.50 for a banana split, which he thought was innocent, and he gets a reply back, you're selfish. Oh, you don't love me, you don't care about me, in anger, that's a pretty good indication that we're not talking about the price of ice cream. We're not talking about a topical issue. We're talking about a value message that he did not see. And you know what? One of the best pictures I've ever seen.
Would you hold that thought?
Yes.
Because your whole destiny, your whole marriage is at stake by really opening your ears and opening your eyes to really see what's going on in the invisible world. We'll be right back after this. Hello, Sid Roth. I'm here with Craig Hill, and I know there are people whose marriages are going to be so radically changed. Craig, you were telling me about the whole issue that if it had been me, I would have said, ice cream, $4. I have a problem with spending so much on an ice cream cone, but that's it. I made the comment and I'm through. I don't even think about it anymore. What's going on with my wife?
Yeah, what I found out is that oftentimes there's a relational message in our speech that we're just totally blind to, unaware of. And when we don't see the relational messages, then we can't even apologize. And what happened with this man...
It's really a trap.
Yeah, this man was just totally taken aback and wondering, why is she having such a response? I mean, why is she flying off the handle in anger about an innocent comment about the price of ice cream? And of course, himself being totally blinded to the area that, or to the fact that there was a relational message of you're worthless taking place, which he needed to deal with. And of course, without dealing with that, just staying on the ice cream level, he can't ever do anything with her to understand her heart. But you know what I think most people don't realize is that there really are supernatural forces in the spirit realm that set people up to fall into these kind of traps without even realizing it, without even recognizing it. People don't understand that there are spirits in the supernatural realm whose purpose it is to destroy marriages and to destroy specific marriages on purpose. And I saw a movie one time about the American Revolution. It was called The Shot Heard Round the World. And the way this movie depicted it is the first shot was not even fired by the Americans or the British, but here were two lines of soldiers facing each other and the two generals talking in between, and they were making some headway at negotiation. But unbeknownst to anybody, over here in the bushes was an arms dealer who didn't care anything about either side, and he, from the bushes, shot the second-in-command British officer dead. And when that man fell over dead, of course, the British assumed that it was an American colonist who had shot him. They returned a volley of fire against the colonists, who returned a volley of fire against the British, and the war was on. Now, I don't know if that movie is historically accurate, but I thought that was a good depiction of what happens so many times in people's marriages, like happened to this man in the ice cream store, where really there was a shot fired against his wife that through his mouth. And the reason I say it's like the arms dealer in the bushes firing the shot, because he didn't even know it happened.
Yeah, but let me ask you a question. Should I just roll over and play dead? I mean, should I just avoid every argument possible? Should I just be a wimp?
No, there's no way you can avoid arguments. But you know what? How do you solve that is when you get an angry response from a marriage partner or a husband withdrawing and closing up, you can know that this very thing has happened. There's been a relational message communicated.
You know it's happened. What do you do?
So what you do is you want to deal on a relational level, not on a topical level. And here's what I noticed. The first step is you want to apologize to your husband or apologize to your wife, not for example, in this case, not for saying, I'm sorry I said ice cream is so expensive. No, that's not the area you want to apologize for. I'm sorry for making you feel like I don't love you, like I don't care about you. Now, I noticed one of the reasons people never do that is because on the topical level, they're right. And see, what I found is, it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong about coming home late, about how you spent the money, about...
So in other words, you're saying you apologize for the real problem.
For the real problem, which is not I came home late, not I spent this money, not I did this wrong or I didn't do that, or whatever the topic is.
But what happens if the wife or the husband says, well, your apologies are cheap, your action doesn't change?
Yeah, what happens is people will say that when they sense that there's not a sincerity in your heart. Here's what I found happened is that when after 7 years in my marriage, when I had this experience I was sharing earlier in the broadcast today, and I began to understand what I had done to my wife's heart. See, I personally never understood that before. I had always just thought, she's irrational. So she's responding irrationally.
She's got a problem.
And that's what this man in the ice cream store...
But you're saying that you were contributing to the problem unintentionally.
Unintentionally, and that's why I was never able to apologize, is because I didn't even understand what was happening.
Or if you did apologize, it would have been insincere, and she would have picked up on it.
She would have known it, because in reality, I didn't understand what the problem was. But once I understood what I had done to her identity, what I had done in sending her a message, you're worthless. And I began to apologize on that level instead of saying, I'm sorry for coming home late, or I'm sorry for driving too fast.
Let's get to where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah.
Your own marriage.
Yeah.
What did you do? What happened?
I then began to, when this event would take place, and I'd get a reaction coming back at me in anger and criticism, I would recognize, oh, I must have sent her a message, you're worthless. And then I could discover what is that. And I'll tell you what I did is I didn't just do that on my own, but I asked God to show me, what did I do exactly? And as God would show me exactly what it was, then I could apologize and say, I'm sorry for making you feel worthless by doing what I did or saying what I said.
So you actually say, I'm sorry for making you feel worthless.
The actual language I usually use, Sid, was I would say, I'm sorry for making you feel like I don't love you. The truth is, I love you, but I can see, and this is what caused her to understand my sincerity and the genuineness of my heart, is that when I said, I can see that by saying what I said, or by driving the way I did, or by coming home late, or by whatever the topical problem was, by doing that way, that I made you feel like I don't care about you and like you don't mean anything to me.
Okay, by being sincere, by doing that one time, did your marriage change or did it take a while?
You know, it began to change the very first time, because it was the first ray of hope that came to my wife, where she said, he actually understands my heart. He actually understands what the real problem is. For 7 years, she had been trying to explain to me what the problem was, and I had never been able to hear it or understand it. By the way, I have found in talking to a lot of couples, this is not just true for men. A lot of women listening to the broadcast today are saying, I wish my husband could hear this.
And everyone that has that thought right now, everyone that says, I wish my husband could hear this, means you're not listening.
That's right.
Am I right?
That's right, because what I found is this thing we're talking about does not just go one way. It goes equally from a wife to a husband.
But you were talking about the blame shift.
Yes.
Of if they would only change, my marriage would be heaven on earth. So I'll change and I'll find someone else that's perfect.
Right.
And then, as you said, the statistics are as bad on the second marriage as the first, if not worse.
Well, sure, because everybody's carrying seed with them, and it doesn't really matter what field you plant your seed in, you're going to produce the same crop. And of course, people think the problem's in the field, and in reality, it's in the seed.
Is there hope for every marriage?
I believe there's hope for every single marriage. I don't believe that there really is a marriage, and I know there are people listening today. You know, Sid, I believe that there are people listening right now and watching this broadcast that are saying, you don't know my marriage. You know, I want to tell you right now, there is hope for your marriage. You can get involved with the supernatural. You can release the power of God in your life today. You can experience the same thing that Jan and I experienced in our marriage, which is the supernatural power of God intervening and beginning to change something in your marriage.
How is your marriage today?
You know, my marriage is wonderful.
Did you hear that? His marriage is wonderful.
No, I love being with my wife.
He loves being with his wife. That can be true for your marriage. Don't give up. Don't yield to that force in the invisible world that's trying to destroy your marriage. Link with the force in the invisible world that's trying to heal your marriage. God. Turn to Him. Say, God, I want you to open my eyes so I can really see what's happening to my spouse. Open my ears so I can really hear what's going on with my children and with my spouse. And if you will do this, God says, in the day that you seek Him with all of your heart, in that day He will be found. He knows your name. He has you watching me right now. He's called you by name. He knows you. He loves you. He's got a destiny for you.